Hello and welcome to AzureWell's monthly podcast. My name is HR Payne, and each month we have the privilege of hosting one of our referral practitioners. In a lot of cases, you know him, Dr. Alphonzo Monzo, the biblical naturopath. And he comes on for an educational presentation where he takes us deeper into the foundational principles that influence true health and healing of the body's remarkable design by God to restore and adapt with the proper foundational support. Dr. Monzo, it is good to see you again and have you again on our podcast. Today we're going to be discussing a topic I think for a lot of people is probably one of the most precious senses that we have. And that's the ability to see.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me again.
Yeah, I think that this is a gift that oftentimes we take for granted until that moment, until it all begins to change, right? And the light begins to start to dim and the words begin to blur, and what was once so crystal clear loses a lot of those precious details. And so I think, for a lot of us, I would say the percentage is extremely high that our loss of vision is affecting, goodness, 95% of the people that are out there. So
yeah, and when you look at how much the nutrition is part of that, obviously we're more nutritionally deficient than we've, as a human race, and we've been in the past. So it just goes without saying, we see more and more vision problems. Of course, we have all this other, synthetic lifestyles now. People didn't used to spend all day looking at a monitor or looking at a phone or not being in real light. These are all the challenges we now have in our modern society.
Yeah, and I think really fortunately, there's been a lot of science wrapped around a lot of this, even by our own government, the National Eye Institute, which is a very specialized branch of the National Institute of Health. They initiated a decade-long study now with age-related eye diseases and studying what nutrients actually could help support. And so I think that we're going to discuss a lot of this today, but it's not just about the nutrients as well, and we all know that. So I think today you're going to be talking about some of those nutrients for eye health that are essential, but also some natural tips we can incorporate into our everyday lives to help better support this precious gift that's been given to us. So let's go ahead and get started. Dr. Monzo, what are some of the most important nutrients to our eye health?
Sure. So if you look at the slide, this is see clearly, live naturally. So natural nutrition and lifestyle for vision health. And I like that first image there. It has like a lot of the superfoods for the eye. It's kind of cool to look at. But here's the breakdown of how we're going to cover things today. Every time it's a little bit different. So we're going to cover 7 key nutrients, and then we're going to go through 8 natural tips, and then we're going to look at 4 ATP energy pathways, and then we're going to look at the AzureWell supplements. Although as we're talking about this, I kind of put the supplements in throughout the entire presentation, but then kind of a summary at the end. So here's the overview for the 7 key nutrients, and then we're going to kind of get into them by categories. First one, vitamin A, or what we might call retinol, or beta carotene, depending on if it's plant source or animal source. And you can even see the word retinol kind of sounds like the retina. So there's that play on word there. And obviously it's very important. You have omega-3 fatty acids, very important for the eyes. Uh, Another thing I might point out here as we go along this list is you're going to notice a lot of these key nutrients are also key nutrients for the brain. And a lot of our vision can't really necessarily be completely separated from the brain because the vision centers are actually in the brain. And what we consider the eye is kind of more like the lens, and or you could say like the camera that allows the information into the brain where the vision center is. So you can't really separate the eye from the brain um, like we like to. It's a lot more holistic than that. So, but then you have lutein, which is a very powerful antioxidant. Zeaxanthin, which is a hard one to say, especially fast like I speak. That is another powerful antioxidant. It's actually naturally occurring in your eye. It's naturally occurring in foods. So very powerful. And we're going to show you some AzureWell supplements that have those two ingredients and others in them. Obviously, I made antioxidants slightly separate, even though those two things kind of are antioxidants. There's a lot of other antioxidants. Don't really know what else to call them other than other nutrients that would be classified as antioxidants. So we're going to get into that in a minute. So I maybe all that's grouped together in later slides. But then you have minerals. And our key ones here are going to be our copper, zinc, and selenium. Well, we'll get more into that when we get to the slides. And then the vitamins typically are the C, E, and B for the eyes. So there's a bunch to talk about in all of these. There you go. This nutrient is vital. So this is A. Retinol, I think, is the key to a lot of functions in the body. Obviously, beta carotene is important. And yes, your body is supposed to be able to convert beta carotene to the retinol and all of its different variations. But I think that's very, very, very hard to do these days. The amount of beta carotene you have to consume and the amount of functional liver that you have to convert that probably is not seen these days, which is why I think more and more people need the retinol source, mostly from cod liver oil. You can see on there from cod liver oil, beef liver, grass-fed butter, eggs, all these types of things. But A is very important for the development of pigment in the retina. So, often we think of pigments and you're thinking your skin, but that's not the only place it's at. The retinal is very important in the eye. And so the vitamin A is directly related to that. And there's even, in some of the more classical, what we might call this naturopathic vitalism, there's a law or doctrine of signatures. We call it law of signatures, doctrine of signatures. And one of the interesting things is when you look at a carrot cut in half, it kind of looks like the eye. And so obviously a carrot has a lot of beta carotene, and then that helps feed the eye. So the law of signatures or the doctrine of signatures basically is a fancy way of saying that it appears that God created things symbolically for us to understand things very easily. So if something looks like something else, oftentimes it's good for that. That's not the whole doctrine of signatures. It goes much deeper than that. But that's kind of like in a nutshell. Sometimes people think of other things like what's another one? Walnuts kind of looks like the brain, and it's healthy for the brain. And there's all these different things out there. Doctrines of signatures also come into homeopathy, where a lot of times we're doing like cures like. So that gets into doctrines of signatures. Well, it's just this concept that oftentimes in nature we see things that resemble something else, and oftentimes it's very good for it. So it's just interesting how retinol or beta carotene has its own unique signature, and it seems to be a very powerful nutrient for the eyes. Now, like we said, if you want to naturally get it, then you want to get cod liver oil, beef liver, grass-fed butter, eggs, and I think here I put it along with the next one. So the next one was omega-3 fatty acids. And of course, the best way to get the omega-3 fatty acids through AzureWell is the Alaskan cod liver oil. It just so happens to be that is also the best way for you to get your retinol. So you can see when we talk about omega-3 fatty oils, they're usually broken down into the DHA and the EPAs. We call these omega-3s. It's pretty much powerful for everything in the body because they're really powerful anti-inflammatory. I kind of just think of them as a substance that kind of just goes in the body and kind of smooths things out. So if something kind of needs some smoothing out, you might want to think of fatty acids. So inflammation, antioxidant, all that kind of stuff where you oxidative stress, anytime you're having a lot of stress on the body and something just kind of needs to be smoothed out. And, back in the day when I first started, before even getting into health, I started out in electrical engineering. So I did 2 years electrical engineering, and which is why when I got into health, I was very fascinated to study biophysics because I wanted to see, does the body work on these same type of principles? And so in electronics, you usually have something, usually like copper, a copper wire, that's something that's conductive, that can carry the positive negative electrons from electricity across. And then it's usually wrapped in an insulation. Well, your fatty acids are like the insulation. A lot of times, because it is a fat, and that's a lot of times in the body you can think of this. If we're electromagnetic, the fatty acids are kind of like the insulation. And what's the purpose of having the insulation? The purpose of having insulation on the wires is so you don't get a short, and you don't get electrocuted, and something's not frying. Because you get 2 wires that don't have any insulation and they touch, you're going to have sparks and all kinds of bad things happening. So you kind of think of this in the same way in the body. In the body, we have all these processes going, and you need kind of that layer of protection sometimes. And that's what these fatty acids do. So if we bring the slides back up, you can see, so your eyes, the retina, needs a lot of fatty acids, just like the brain. And there's been all this research done, the AMD and the AOA. This is one of the eye associations. And they're specifically mentioning these specific types of disease symptoms being related to omega-3 fatty acids. So we're not making any claims here. We're not saying that, this is absolutely going to be a cure for these things, but this is what the medical science is already telling us, that EPAs and DHAs are directly related to dry eye syndrome and the retinopathy and other eye conditions. So that's not coming from your naturopath or your natural health practitioner. This is just main medical science now. Yeah. Saying these things. So they're agreeing with us. So of course, fish oils, salmon, cod liver oil, tuna, these are ways you can get your omega-3 fatty acids. Now there are some other ways that are not necessarily fish, like flaxseed and things like that. They probably have just as amount of danger if they're not made correctly, because when you start getting into seed oils, then we all, I think everyone knows that you can get into the wrong seed oils with are highly processed and really inflammatory. So you have to watch that. Now the problem with things like flaxseed oil and stuff like that is you're probably not going to get any retinol or the naturally occurring D. So the benefit with going with something like Alaskan cod liver oil is you're getting all of your omega oils, and you're getting the retinol and the D, and then all kinds of other things that are found in the Alaskan cod liver oil that we've talked about in other broadcasts. You might want to actually look at. There was a whole broadcast just on the Alaskan codfish oil. I got my words twisted there, trying to say liver and fish at the same time. And that was a great podcast. And we really go deep into the science of cod liver oil and why it's so powerful,
And
but so important for the eyes.
I think this summarized just a little bit of that podcast, and definitely go back and reference it. We have some really truly pioneering voices within that podcast on the types of cod liver oil, fish oils that are out there. And what's so important that we understand is that we want the cod liver oil that's in the triglyceride form, right? Not the highly heated, molecularly distilled form that destroys that whole fatty acid matrix of the cod liver oil. It's understand that the primary structural fats of the cod liver oil are DHA and EPA and vitamin A as retinol, as Dr. Monzo just said, that are essential for regenerating the rod cells and supporting that night vision and the pigment epithelium function for our vision. So unlike molecularly distilled, highly heated oils, it's only the true triglyceride form that preserves that natural lipid matrix to protect those fragile compounds from oxidation and the formation of what they know as very toxic retinoid oxidation byproducts, which have been associated. So if you take in these fractionated oils, and that's what molecular distillation is, it's so highly heated, it's fractionating the fatty acid matrix. And what will happen is it will cause lipid peroxidation and mitochondrial stress and those advanced glycation end products that damage the eye, inflame really every one of our trillion plus cells in our body. And it's the whole reason also why we don't work with magnesium stearate, stearic acid, vegetable stearate in our capsules, because we don't want these fractionated oils at dosages that are going to target every one of our trillion plus cells, because in the case of the eye, they create these retinoid oxidation byproducts that are very damaging to the eye.
Yeah, and obviously Azure would love to sell more Alaskan cod liver oil, but this is not the reason why I recommend it. Because the reality is, I get to ask this all the time when we tell people they need to be on an Alaskan or a cod liver oil. They go, well, can I just go buy any one I want? Yeah. And I'm like, no, please. I'm like, I know I'm not trying to sell you just Azure, but I'm telling you 99.9% of fish oil on the market in the supplement form is awful for you. It's not going to give you any benefits. It's probably going to hurt you more than it actually helps, because go back and watch that podcast we were talking about, because there's so many little nuances on how to make this product correctly, even how you fill the capsules right, making sure no oxygen's getting in and all these things. So there's all these little nuances to making sure your oil is not rancid or bad or fractionated or heated the wrong way. And so that's a problem with a lot of companies out there. And the other problem is a lot of the oils are so highly processed that on the label, if you know how to read the labels right, you will see they're adding back in synthetic
That's
A,
right.
and they're adding back in synthetic D, and sometimes you'll see this retinol palmate. And when you see those words, you run away right there. You're probably getting a synthetic form. They're adding it back in. Why are they adding it back in? Because they took everything out. So you really do have to be careful with oils, probably more than any other product out there,
for sure,
other than the fact that you want whole food. But when you're really looking at a product on the market, the oils are the ones that you really have to make sure you're getting something that's made right, because not any cod liver oil is going to work for you. And like I said, if they're processed the wrong way, they probably are going to be causing you more harm. And I can tell you, the pharmaceutical companies love that. They love giving you fake stuff that causes harm. So then they can go back and say, oh yeah, see, that stuff doesn't work. And it's like, well, you didn't actually use the real stuff. You didn't actually use what was nature or nature based. You used something synthetic, and that's how they can water down the system for us. I'll leave it with that.
I really appreciate you
say so much more.
It's probably one of the most important essential nutrients that we can offer up the body. Mm-hmm. And again, it applied. We're not just talking about the eyes here. We're talking about every one of our trillion plus cells in our body. Mm-hmm. You have problems with controlling inflammation, regulating inflammation. You're not going to go look for a product that's like an NSAID or an ingredient, like turmeric, for instance. It helps, that the literature says and science says it helps support a healthy inflammatory response in the body. You're just swimming against the current. You got to get the cells, every one of your trillion plus cells, the docosahexaenoic acid, the eicosapentaenoic acid in its truest form, in its triglyceride form, with the pro-resolving mediators, right? These pro-resolving mediators, we're one of the only companies that actually measure these PRMs. And these are the resolvins and some of these other compounds that are like the body's switch to regulating inflammation. And so if you don't have it, if you're not supplementing it, it's going to be very tough to utilize nutrition in an allopathic way to control it.
Yes. And your body's made up of this stuff. You have to get it in there. This was like number 3 and 4, I think now, which was the lutein and the zeaxanthin. I tell you, that's a tricky one to say.
Say that 10 times.
You can't. Technically, they are classified as antioxidants. As I already said, this is naturally occurring in the eye. It's naturally occurring in a lot of foods. I think in the AzureWell product, it's coming from marigold, but I mean, you can find it's naturally found in egg yolks. It's spinach. There's a bunch of other foods that you can find these naturally occurring in. And so they're good for a lot of things. Obviously, it's an antioxidant, but it's really important for light control in the eye. So you can see, defending against blue light, we have a lot of issues with blue light today, which when we're talking about blue light, we're talking about synthetic blue light that comes from like your computer screens and your cell phones and your iPads. That's synthetic blue light. But not just that, just the eye's ability to have sharpness and light contrast. It's not uncommon when you see people getting older. A lot of times they start having vision issues with light. Maybe it's at night, they can't see as well, night blindness or something like that, or maybe high lights affects the eyes, or they're more sensitive to light. These type of issues really point to these types of antioxidants that you might need. They're also been shown to be very powerful against cataracts. So it says on here, kale, spinach are 2 really powerful foods that naturally contain this. And like I said, there's a bunch of others. I'm pretty sure it's the marigold where we're getting the advanced eye support. That's a really fantastic formula. And then I kind of combine this one with the antioxidants. So there is actually an antioxidant formula as well that AzureWell has. So both of these would be powerful for the eyes. Obviously, the advanced eye support is directly made specifically for eye health. So it's a little bit more broad-based for the eye, whereas antioxidant formula is more just for correcting antioxidant issues in the body.
Yeah, I wrote an article that you'll be able to reference, those that are watching this. It's called, it's on our blogs at azurelivingwell.com. Go to the blogs, and you'll see it's going to be right there at the top. Protecting the gift of sight. What age, and I'm reading it here, what age-related eye disease studies AREDS reveal and what it doesn't. And I want to just mention with this, some of the findings here were just awesome, honestly. I really appreciate what they actually surfaced here. And these A-rate studies, so they had it was a decade-long study. I was talking about it before. It was a decade-long study, and it was actually two studies. It's the AREDS1 and the AREDS2. And this ultimately, what they shown, the results were quite significant in that some of these nutrients that you were talking about, vitamin C, vitamin E, zinc, zeaxanthin, lutein, they actually have been clinically validated to reduce the risk of advanced macular degeneration by 25%. I mean, that's phenomenal. That's you don't find that in a lot of different studies, but it was by nourishing the body with this targeted support, they were able to get this outcome. Specifically, the dosage that they were using was the precise combination of 10 milligrams of lutein and 2 milligrams of zeaxanthin. And these are this is really the foundational players. These are the primary carotenoid pigments that are literally found in the macula pigment itself. And it's these compounds that kind of act like this blue light filter that protects the rods and the cones and the various retinal structures from this oxidative stress. A lot of it is oxidative stress because they're fats. They're peroxidizing. And so, man, just store up on, let your eyes just be immersed with these key nutrients. And really, you will find it's very highly supportive to your vision.
And those are the exact ratios we have in the advanced.
Yeah, you better believe it. We're based upon science for sure.
Yeah, 10 milligrams and 2. So there you go. See, is there another? Oh, okay. So the next one goes into the minerals, the copper, zinc, selenium. Fundamental of the eye health. Retinol, vitamin A, helps make your copper more bioavailable. So when you're taking these minerals, it's going to help the A actually get into the retina better, which is really interesting. It's an important step in creating melatonin, or not melatonin, melanin. Actually, it is an important step in melatonin too. There's a lot of science that proves that melatonin is actually made when we have sunlight hitting our eyes, and the melatonin is actually made during the day, and then it's released, based on when the sun goes down, the light's changing. You have that whole cycle that the body goes through. Hey, it's time to sleep because the lights are going out. Of course, if you're in front of blue light all the time, those circadian rhythms are not quite working right, and you might still be pumping out more serotonin and not switching over to melatonin, so you can't sleep. But melatonin, melanin, very similar, related. There's very similar neurological pathways that are related to light in the eyes and the vitamin A's and your minerals. So that the whole process biologically is all related. And so here's one of those studies here, 25%. And that is the with beta carotene, vitamin C, and vitamin E. They did a study, and they were looking at how much it can reduce age-related macular degeneration. So that's what the AMD stands for, age-related macular degeneration. And they were showing that it could reduce by 25%. And so phenomenal, probably the same study. Now, here's something we've been seeing a lot. So this is really important for like cataracts and things like that. That is something that we see a lot more now post-COVID. And if you understand what a lot of people were doing during COVID, which were the COVID cocktail, high doses. So fractionated nutrition at high doses of synthetic vitamin D, or synthetic vitamin C, and then usually high doses of zinc. Now, it's not a food-based zinc. Most people were giving you some type of inorganic zinc or a metallic zinc that the body really can't utilize. It's not what you would naturally find in food. In food, we want organically bound minerals, but unfortunately, a lot of companies just sell rock form minerals. So that overdoing it of the zinc and the C and the D was really depleting people of their copper and selenium. It can even displace your zinc, the bioavailable zinc in the body. And what is the end result is people getting a lot of cataracts now. And that was some of the research of trying to think of his name now. Dead Doctors Don't Lie. He's the one who came up with the 90 essential nutrients. I can't believe it. Dr. Wallach.
Yeah.
And what Dr. Wallach did some research looking at cataracts, and what he found was it was directly related to a selenium copper deficiency. And of course, when we're looking at a lot of these fractionated high dose synthetics, especially the C and the zinc, when you're getting those in high doses, they will directly deplete your copper and selenium. So people were doing high doses of that stuff during COVID, and now we're seeing a lot of people having problems with increased risk of cataracts post-COVID. And it's not a coincidence. It's all related, and that's why we need to get back to whole food nutrition. So when you look at the slide here, you can see you can get the core copper. And that's one way to get copper in there. Now that has beef liver in there, and if you know anything about beef liver, it's loaded with nutrients. And so that's how we take something in and make sure we're getting a whole food form. So you're going to be getting selenium in there, you're going to be getting zinc in there, you're going to be getting all kinds of stuff because beef liver is a superfood. Another way to do this is the whole food multi. Now, there's going to be more nutrients in the whole food multi. There's going to be a lot more vitamins. There's a whole foods form of copper in there already. Right now, it's at 4 milligrams. And then a way to get your organic minerals is the fulvic humic blend. So there's a good way to get a lot of your minerals and some of your vitamins, but you get minerals from all three of these products. Naturally occurring, you can get like beans, chicken, egg, red meat, but that's what we got there for the AzureWell products. I really love fulvic humic blend. There's so many things that's good for, but it is just super rich in your minerals. The next one are more of the key vitamins. So again, the whole food nutrition would come into hand here, but specifically vitamin C, E, and B. We've talked about this a lot. Your B vitamins, specifically B2, 3, 6, 9, 12, are so important for the eyes and the brain for reducing inflammation, lowering histamine levels. So again, cataract, glaucoma, all those type of things would be related. When I think about these, I also think about, we're going to talk about this here soon, energetically in the body. And energetically, you kind of see these patterns. And these B vitamins are very powerful for methylation functions. And methylation has to do with liver and liver function, and liver detox. And the very systems energetically that have to do with the liver are directly related to your eyes and the brain. So there's no coincidence here that you start seeing these overlaps. The same nutrients help the same areas of the body because energetically they're related, all related energetically. And so it's not uncommon to see the B vitamins being very important for the brain and the eyes and the liver because it's all kind of related. And we're going to show you some of the energy pathways in the Alphonzo body system that helps the eyes are directly related to liver, gallbladder, brain. So that's the B vitamins. Really important. Then you have C. Well, C is a vitamin, but it can also be categorized as an antioxidant. Very powerful for that. So we see that the antioxidants really improve eyesight and really help battle against the age-related diseases of the eye. Obviously, the more antioxidants you have in the body, the less your body's going to age, because the aging process is really the process of the body breaking down and not being able to build itself again correctly. And why can't it build itself again correctly? Because we don't have the proper nutrition and we have all this oxidative stress and inflammation. So if you can bring in antioxidants that bring down the oxidative stress and you have the proper nutrition, your body's going to be able to regenerate better, and then you're going to age a lot slower. Obviously, you're getting older every year, but you might not look it. And so that's what we're shooting for here. And
Yeah,
I think I have the foods on there naturally occurring. Obviously, I think most people know vitamin C. You can get it from grapefruit and oranges and spinach and tomatoes and all those kind of things. Acerola cherry is a big one.
Yeah. I think that really a misconception here that people have, and oftentimes, and I really want to make sure I represent this properly. We all know vitamin C is a very important structural component of the eye. And it's actually, that fluid of the eye that we all have, it's called the aqueous humor. Vitamin C is actually in high amounts of the aqueous humor. And this is really to help neutralize those free radicals caused by sunlight, right?
Yeah.
And so it's naturally occurring there. But with the point that I want to make, and so it's super critical to the eye, and there's just simply no way to get if I were just to stack all of these various nutrients into one little capsule, you would just have a whole lot of nothing, just a bunch of fairy dust. And so there's just understand that there's just no way to get all of these different nutrients into one capsule. You may have to source a couple different capsules. And this is one of those where I like to source, our whole food vitamin C. But so if I'm gonna support myself with vitamin C, which you probably should, just in general, it's not just for the eyes, it's for adrenal function, it's for healthy immune system. I mean, all of these different critical physiologic nuances that go into the body are very dependent upon vitamin C. But the point that I want to make here is oftentimes you see the studies, and like in the ARED study for specific to the eye, they spoke of 500 milligrams of vitamin C. What you have to understand is they were talking about 500 milligrams of ascorbic acid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's where I pump the brakes, guys. Now, ascorbic acid is a natural compound of even whole food vitamin C, but the synthetic form is very destructive, and it actually can, at high amounts, generate a free radical compound called dihydroascorbate. Not to mention what it could do to the ceruloplasmin, right, Dr. Monzo?
Yeah.
It just destroys it. And so, imagine if these studies would have used whole food vitamin C, right? Whole food, complete with the various tannins and the flavonoids and the tyrosine cofactors. I mean, this I think the results would have been even more profound. Forget the 25% recovery. We're going to start. We do this the right way with whole food compounds. We're going to achieve a much greater result. So, again, when you look at our whole food vitamin C, you're not going to see these large amounts of ascorbic acid that are typically represented in the literature. You're going to see a whole food representation with its critical synergist cofactors and essential transporters to allow the vitamin C to get more systemic in the body.
Yeah, and that's important again. Same thing with the cod liver oil. This is another one where you don't want to be getting the wrong form of C. So you don't want to be doing the synthetic, because we just discovered that with the minerals. If you're using the synthetic form of C, you're going to start depleting minerals because of the effect it has on multiple systems of the body, like ceruloplasmin and others. That's going to deplete your copper, and then you're going to have problems. So you really want the whole food. Another great product from Azure that has whole food C in it is the adrenal food. So the whole food C complex or the adrenal food, both of those have whole food C. There's a little bit in the whole food multi, but not as much as you would get in this one. Okay, so we finished the first part. So the second part was the 8 tips for eye health. So one is the 20-20-20 rule, which I think I need to apply that one a little bit more. And what they say is every 20 minutes of screen time, you should look at something 20 feet away for at least 20 seconds. And it's just to help relieve the strain on the eye, kind of break up that monotony, get your eyes moving, getting them focused on something else. And so this really helps with the eyes. It probably helps with the muscles. It helps with the strain. It helps with all kinds of stuff, not to mention a little bit less blue light. And so the 20-20-20 rule, I probably need to do that more. Now, I can tell a big difference. Everything's always changing in life and in practice. I used to be very heavily working with people and working on people, a lot of body therapy or hands-on therapy. And as I've gotten older, it seems like things have shifted more to where I sit in the front of a screen a whole lot more, a lot more consultations versus the hands-on. And I know when I have days when I'm sitting in front of the monitor all day,
man,
you're just wasted by the end of the day. It's like, I think I liked working on people 8 hours a day for every day. That was actually better. We thought that was a little rough, but I think that was actually easier on the body than
for sure
on the monitor all day.
For sure.
This does zap you. But I would say it would even be a better idea if you could get up every 20, 30 minutes and actually get outside and get your feet in the grass and actually look at a nice green tree and the blue sky. That's a good blue right there, the blue sky. And actually relieve your eye strain that way. That might be a little bit nicer way to go. But, if they don't let you out of your place of work every 20, 30 minutes, then you can kind of have something else you look at. But yeah. The second one is funny. One of these things I looked up, I was like, no, this is definitely not true. A lot of people say you're supposed to protect your eyes when you're out in the sun with sunglasses. Not a good idea. Better idea is to get sunlight in your eyes. You really do need the sunlight. And of course, if you're getting the proper nutrition, then you don't have to really worry about the UV light being as bad as what they say. I think a lot of the hype on UV and the sun is bad for you ideas really have more to do with our lack of real nutrition and all the toxic chemicals we're putting on our bodies, right? Especially when they start talking about cancer and things like that. It's like, is it really the sun giving you cancer, or is it the fact that you're, lathering yourself in toxic chemicals and then you're baking it into the skin? It might have something new to do with the toxic chemicals you're putting on, and a lot less to do with the actual sun. But you do need sunlight in your eyes. If you're not getting the sunlight in your eyes, you're not going to be activating your retinol, the vitamin A, and you're not going to be stimulating the process of making hormone D in the body. So you don't want that. You do want some sunlight in your eyes. And the more nutritionally boosted your body gets, the less you're going to be sensitive to sunlight. Because sometimes people are really sensitive to the sun, even burning. If you burn really easily in the sun, that's most likely a sign that you don't have the proper amounts of retinol, your fatty acids, and your copper. And when you start improving those things, you'll find out you tan better and you don't burn as much and the sun doesn't bug your eyes as much.
I was surprised that you showed up today, Dr. Monzo. There it is. I really thought that you would be sporting the new look. And that's when you're cool is when you're wearing those. 24 hours a day, right?
That's right.
I'm sure you're going to speak on them here in a second.
I am. When we get to number 6,
Yeah.
reduce blue light exposure, especially at night. The blue light blocking glasses. You know, if you're going to be sitting in front of a screen for 8 hours, you might want to be wearing these all day long. I mean, I know I feel a lot better when I wear mine. And so we'll get to those in just one second. If I get off track, who knows where we will end up. But stay well hydrated. That's another one. We want proper intake of water. You have the tear filaments, all these different processes of the eyes require water. They have moisture. That helps prevent the dry eyes. I mean, even one of the things they tell you if you go to an eye doctor and stuff, they keep your eyes is blinking often, especially if you're one of those people that have to wear something in your eyes. If you're wearing contacts, things like that, you want to be doing a lot of blinking. It keeps the moisture. When we don't blink as much and you're not moisturizing the eye, because there is a moisturizing process that happens when you blink, then your eyes are going to become drier. And of course, you need to be hydrated for that, right? If you're not putting the water in, water's not going to be able to come out. And that also has a lot to do with nutrition and electrolytes and all those type of things. 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Now, I think we say this almost every podcast about how important sleep is. And it really is important. While you're asleep is the time the body helps repair. So if you're not getting proper sleep, you're not going to help. Your body isn't going to be able to repair. And it has to repair your eyes too. So the eyes need sleep. They need to be relaxed. And think about it. When do your eyes get to relax? Most likely, that's the only time your eyes are really relaxing and you're not really straining them is when you're sleeping because your eyes are closed. You're not reading anything. You're not looking at anything. You're just asleep. Maybe you're seeing things in your mind as you sleep with dreams, but the eyes are moving, but you're not putting them under the strain of actually having to read things and stuff like that. Eat the rainbow diet daily. Yeah, that's another way of saying eat whole foods, dark green vegetables, colorful vegetables. You know, when we think of the vegetables, the orange, you have your carrots, all these bright orange colors. We've already mentioned a number of times different nutrients that are found in there. Obviously, you're going to get your vitamin C's, you're going to get your beta carotenes. You're going to find a lot of these vitamins and minerals in your colorful vegetables. Wild caught fish, obviously for the essential fatty acids and your fat soluble vitamins. So that's a great way to get your vitamins, your minerals, your antioxidants. Reducing the blue light exposure at night. Yes. So technically these ones are pretty dark. You can see they're almost orange. Technically, these are more supposed to be for nighttime. When you're getting closer to night, I find I really like them all day long, quite honestly. They do have a lighter pair that's almost more of a yellow color that's better to wear during the day. And this all has to do with circadian rhythms and what you want to be producing. So these are more for when you're getting close to the night. Throw these on so that if you're on your cell phone or an iPad or you're doing something, you're not messing up those rhythms that badly because you're blocking out a lot of that blue light. And so your body can start shifting to nighttime and start shifting into night mode. And, you know, now we have devices that have night modes on them. And that's a good thing to get used to doing, going into night mode so that you're not getting all that excess of blue light. So there are different ones you can buy. There are ones that go over glasses too. So if you wear glasses, you can get a pair and go over the glasses. And that's the reason why you want to reduce blue light exposure at night. 2 reasons. One is because the blue light is hard on the eyes. But 2, it's really messing up the circadian rhythms because that's all based on light exposure. And if we just go back to nature, in nature, people knew when to be awake and when to be asleep by the sun. And when the sun went down, you didn't have anything to do. There was no electricity. You know, there were maybe you had candles, but you're not going to do a whole lot by candlelight. So most of the time when the sun went down, people went to sleep. That's why we sleep at night. And when the sun comes up, it's time to get up and go to work. And that's all built into the natural rhythms of the body. And the body is designed to work that way. So now we have these artificial things. So we're sitting in bed, maybe at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and we're still looking at this thing. And we wonder why we can't fall asleep. Well, you're stimulating a system that's just producing more and more serotonin, and the melatonin is not kicking in. So it's going to be harder to fall asleep if you're constantly looking at that stuff. And then that's putting more strain on the eyes, and it's not the right type of light to activate your retinols and your D and all the other stuff in the body that you need sunlight for. So that's why we want to reduce the blue light as much as possible, especially at night. Eye exercises. So that's a very interesting one. And there is a power here. You do have polarity differences in the hands. That's how Alphonzo body works. It's all polarity. And one hand's negative, one hand's positive. Left is negative, right is positive. So you're putting your palms over your eyes. And of course, I'm closing my eyes and putting the palms over. And then you're doing the exercise where you're kind of looking around. I like doing it kind of like a clock. So you're exercising those muscles. And the hands over the eyes really helps with the energy flow. And it just kind of relieves a lot of pressure. If you just try it every once in a while, you're going to feel like, wow, that kind of just feels like it kind of like calm the eyes down. And it really does. It really has a calming effect. So you can't underestimate the power of the hands. It's kind of almost like grounding for the eyes, if you think about it. Overall, your feet are negatively charged. Now, there's nuances here, because when you really get detailed, yeah, one foot's more positive, one foot's more negative. But overall, if you're looking at polarity, the feet are negative, the top of the head's positive. So when we go out and ground, we're literally grounding just like an electrical circuit. In an electrical circuit, you have a ground. And that wire goes out and goes into a pole that used to go down in the ground. That's usually how they did it. And usually on your electrical outlet, it's the little round hole on the bottom. So you have the two straight lines and the round hole. The round hole is your ground. And make sure everything is grounded, so you're not getting electrocuted or anything. The body's the same thing. The body has to be grounded. So the negative polarity of the feet go onto the ground, and you're grounded that way. But we also have these polarities on our hands. So when we put them over, you're getting that effect to the eyes. And so that's going to help circulation. It's going to help relax the muscles. And then the last one is basically clean up the lifestyle. Quit the smoking, clean up the diet, get rid of those bad foods, your synthetic foods. And if it comes out of a box or a can, probably not the best thing. If it's highly processed, seed oils, not a good idea. Smoking, just so bad for the body. You have to remember the eyes need a lot of circulation. It's probably one of the biggest struggles to eye health is getting circulation to the eye. And so the eyes need a lot of circulation. The brain needs a lot of circulation. So if you're doing things diet-wise or lifestyle-wise, that's really going to break down circulation in the body. You're kind of just shooting yourself. So there are your 8 tips for eye health. Pathways. All right, so in ATB, these are 2 different pathways you see there. They're not the same thing as the meridians. That's a whole completely different system. It's a real system, but it's a different system. And so in this one, you have blood messenger pathway and head and vision messenger pathway. And you can see they are both very long pathways. They are green because this cycle of the body, we call it third cycle. So the body is organized in 7 different cycles. Everything is put into its own category based on resonating frequency. And so when you kind of see these frequency patterns of the body, you see third cycle is related to the color green. It's related to the liver and the gallbladder, partially pancreas, the thyroid, the brain, the eyes, peripheral nerves. The liquid level would be like blood chemistry. Nutritionally, third cycle is related to your fats and your retinols and your fat-soluble vitamins. When it comes to elimination, this is a cycle that governs methylation and liver detox. the emotion is going to be anger and frustration. So, and the sense is the sense of sight. So working on these pathways would be very powerful because they travel through the eye. They also happen to travel through the brain, and look where else they go. They go through the liver, they go through the gallbladder. So, like I said, you start seeing these patterns energetically in the body. And the more you learn about nutrition, you can't help but see that there's a very similar overlap between energetically and physically and chemically. So I don't have it written up there, but an easy way to do the blood and blood messenger pathway is simply to touch the back of the skull, what we call the occipital, on one side of the skull, and then the other hand's going to the opposite side right above the eye. So right back here, and then right here. So you're just touching those 2 points. And because your hands are separate polarities, it's going to pull the energy along that pathway. It's very simple. And for head and vision, almost the same. On that one, you're touching a 20 in the side of your neck. And it's usually opposites because the way the energy circulates, you're pulling it up and it's crossing over and then coming down the opposite side. So it's how the brain crosses. And it's very simple. You don't have to be thinking anything. You don't have to be rubbing. You don't have to be pushing. You don't have to do anything. It's just the way nature works. Energy travels from negative to positive in electrical circuits. That's why all electrical circuits have a positive and negative and a ground. And so when you're putting 2 different polarities on your body, energy is going to move. And the reason we pick these locations is because of how the pathway flows. So we're picking the pathway of least resistance. And so when you touch these locations, it's going to travel along the pathways you're seeing on the screen. So that energy is going to flow through the eye and it's going to help. Now, there's more than one pathway. I said there was actually 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. No, 4. I think I said 4. 4. So it's not just a third cycle. There's other cycles. So when we get to things like emotions, you can start seeing if we have a lot of anger or frustration, guess what? It can start affecting your eyes. And people are like, what do you mean? If I get mad at people, it can affect your eyes? Well, not necessarily if you have a feeling of anger or you're upset or frustrated. Feelings aren't necessarily a good or bad thing. They're neutral. They're neutral things. But when you put your feelings into motion, emotions, energy and motion, now it's an emotion. And then the question is, usually when you're putting in something into emotion, how are you now expressing the emotion? You could punch someone in the face, or that's dysfunctional. You could repress the anger, also dysfunctional, or you can learn how to properly express your feeling of anger. And there's nothing wrong with that. But our society does a very bad job teaching us how to handle our emotions. And so the problem is when we mishandle them, when you have a feeling of anger, not a problem. But you go punch someone in the face, that's a problem. Not just for you, but for someone else. And it's going to become a bigger problem for you if they press charges. But so when we inappropriately handle the emotions, especially even repressing sometimes is worse, because then those things get stuck in the body energetically and they can cause problems in the future because of how energy in the body works. So if we're not handling the emotions correctly, they can eventually lead to problems. And so, you could find, oh, I'm having eye problems all of a sudden. Well, why is that true? Well, it might be because of this emotion. But there's another one. There's one called fifth cycle. Okay, fifth cycle, there's only one pathway. This is called heart messenger pathway, mainly because it goes through the heart, but happens to go through the eye and the brain, and it comes down into the gut. So this is one of those pathways that create the brain, heart, gut connection. Isn't that fascinating? So you see all the corresponding patterns are different here. Now it's the color red. Now it has more to do with the heart. It still has to do with the brain, the eyes, more to do with the small intestine, the bone. It's more iron, magnesium here, the elimination of the intestines. The emotion is shame and performance. So when we get into shame, which is really more of a attack against our humanity, not the same thing as guilt. Like when you feel bad for doing something, shame says you are bad, not that you did something bad. So shame is a very dehumanizing feeling or emotion that we can get, and that usually drives us to perform, perfectionism or going or doing. And so that's the emotion that can affect this system. And then it's the sense of touch. And so simply all you can do is you can touch, you can see the right hand's touching the 14. That is that blue dot on the chart. So it's right at the bottom of your rib cage. So your right hand can go to that bottom of the rib cage on that blue dot. And then the other hand, you're looping. So you're touching your thumb to your little finger because you don't have a hand free to touch this finger. So by looping, you're making a connection there, and you're making a connection touching the 14. And that gets that energy pathway flowing. So your left hand loops the left little finger, and then your right hand's going to that right 14. And that is very powerful. It is also really great for the heart and thyroid and everything else listed on the screen. But it's another one that goes through the eyes. So now you can see there's two emotions that, or if they're out of whack or not being handled right, could potentially cause eye issues. And then the last one is called immune vitality messenger pathway. This is a first cycle, so it's yellow. It has a lot more to do with the lymphatic system and the immune system, but it also controls the central nervous system. It has a lot to do with solar energy and the bioenergy. So the eyes are directly related to the brain, the vision center of the brain. This really kind of does go through the vision center of the brain. And it also has to do with that function of how the body handles light with the eyes. So you'll notice nutritionally, this one is related to copper and retinol. It's also related to the electron transport chain for making energy. It's going to be highly related to lymph elimination. It's going to be the hepatic system and the skin and the sweating. The emotion is worry, or you could say worry anxiety, not fear anxiety. That's different. This would be worry anxiety, or being like preoccupied. And then it also helps the sense of smell. So this pathway helps the eyes due to its effect on the brain and retinol. And the simple way to work on this one, let me think in my mind. Oh, there's so many ways. It's usually touching the coccyx. So that's the bottom of your tailbone. You can see where it kind of comes through the bottom of your tailbone there. So you go to your coccyx, the bottom of the tailbone. Usually they would be left hand to the coccyx, and then your right hand could go to like the 22, which is right underneath the collarbone. And then you're just touching those two locations. That's probably the easiest way to apply that one if you're working on yourself. There's longer applications if someone else was working on you, but working on yourself, that's an easy way to do that one. All right, last section. We kind of covered some of the nutrition already with the AzureWell products based on the different categories, but this is the overall view. What do we have for eyes with AzureWell line? Well, what they have is obviously the basic nutrition for the brain and for the eyes. You need copper and fat, so core copper and cod liver oil. Just like we were saying, from the electrical engineer viewpoint, you need that part that's conductive, and you need the part that's the insulation. We also have the antioxidant support, very powerful. Again, it's going to help the brain, going to help the eyes. Mitochondria support, antioxidant support. We have the liquid B12, and then we have the Azure has the activated B complex. So both of these are different forms of the Bs. The B12 is only B12, as you can imagine. So it's still going to help brain, eyes, nerves. The activated B complex is a whole complex. So that's going to have the majority of your B vitamins in there, whole food form. And so It's going to cover more brain, nerve, eye support, and cellular energy. So good. That's a great methylation support formula. So there is your basic nutrition for eye support. Some specialties. These are products that are a little bit more specific to eye support. Obviously, the advanced eye support, because it's going to help the eyes. It has the retinol support in there, health, the photoreceptor health, and acuity. So visual acuity is really going to help. And that's the one that has the lutein in it, and it has, I'm just looking at it right now, prickly pear is in there, and bilberry, and carrots, and turmeric, and spinach, organic chlorella, the organic tomatoes, and zeaxanthin is in there. So all that's in there. And the zeaxanthin is 2 milligrams, and the lutein is 10 milligrams. So that is a powerhouse formula for the eyes. AzureWell also has a nerve support formula. Now, not necessarily directly targeting the eyes, but if we understand that a lot of your eye function comes from the brain and what you're seeing, then this kind of does help, because it's going to help brain and nerves, helps calm the body, neurotransmitters. It has a lot of the phospholipids in there, so that's going to be really powerful for the brain health and eye health. You have NAC antioxidants. So here's another product that has to do with antioxidants. It's more related to the antioxidant, or the NAC ability. And that's going to have a very powerful effect on liver and detoxification. So if you're thinking back energetically, how the body's organized by frequency, if you're helping the liver and that type of detoxification, you're going to help the eyes, because energetically they're in the same system. And then you have glutathione plus. Well, that is probably one of the master antioxidants in the body. It's very powerful for the liver, very powerful for detox. And according to the NIH, lens transparency, and it helps detox the aqueous humor. So that's very interesting, isn't it? On the NAC, there was a statement from the NIH that it helps with clarity in the eyes. So very interesting. These are more studies coming out about these nutrients and how they affect eyes. And I think this is the last one. So when we're looking at circulation and detox to help the eyes, we have the CircuHeart enzymes. That is a phenomenal formula. You have proteolytic enzymes in there. That's why it's called CircuHeart enzymes, because there's proteolytic enzymes in there. And then you have your natural herbals like hawthorn and stuff in there. But circulation, antioxidant support, clot reduction capabilities, that is a powerhouse. So when you're needing better circulation, especially getting to the brain or the eyes or anywhere that's hard to get circulation to, this is a product that's going to help that circulation. On the far right, we have IP6 Supreme, mainly because we need to get all that unbound iron out. That unbound iron will cause you everything to rust in the body. And yeah, I think we have seen some people who seem to be accumulating unbound iron, definitely in the brain, but even in the eyes. And so when you start getting that out, it's like, oh, my eyes are improving. And it's like, well, you know, that's kind of just what happens holistically. When you give the body what it needs, the body just kind of knows how to fix itself. And then you have the body clay pack. Now, this is a body clay pack. This is not for consuming. This is for external use, but you can use it on the face or anywhere on the body. And it's for pulling toxins out and for cleansing. So in Chinese medicine, there's all kinds of eye therapies with different acupuncture points all around the eyes. So even doing like a clay pack on the face, probably more for the women. I have to admit, I don't do many clay packs. That maybe because I'm a guy and I just never really got into that thing. But my wife loves doing those kind of things. And so, you know, it's probably good for us. We probably should be doing it. Put a nice clay pack on the face. And if it's around the eyes, you need to be careful not getting it in the eyes, obviously. But you're going to stimulate a lot of those points, pull out the toxins, and it's also going to help. So these are different ways. to help the eyes with the AzureWell products. And like we said before, don't forget to check out some of the other podcasts, because we have podcasts that go directly into some of these other nutrients, like the cod liver oil. We had one that goes into a whole episode just on IP6. We might have had one on copper, but you want to learn more about a lot of these other products and different topics we've talked about, I would check out the other podcasts.
Dr. Monzo, thank you so much. The cards are really stacked against us, from the environmental stressors that we have, the internal stressors. The liver's taking a burden, the eyes are taking a hit, the cell phones, the blue lights, everywhere we look, their nature is not so much nature anymore, right? It's unfortunately we are in a cocoon of environmental stressors, and I think that you've really provided us with some valuable insight into some of these targeted strategies that can really help meaningfully slow the progression of some of these degenerative conditions of the eye. And it kind of reminds me that, also as you're going through this, the deeper truth is the body's not always asking for force, right? We're not replacing, we're not trying to replace or replenish the body in an allopathic manner, but we're trying to balance it. And we got, in order to do that, it's not just protecting the eye, but supporting the systems that give it life. And when you were talking about these other strategies, I think that you're so hitting home with me on that. I'm going to go back and listen to that part again. But depending, no matter where we are in our health journey, each one of us have our own journey. And I think that there are many strategies that we're going to take. It's not a linear thought. And I think it's important to, if you're experiencing some concerns with your vision, or you have a condition that you need to address, to work with a practitioner, and you can pinpoint some of these strategies for yourself. Get with a naturopath that is vitalist and is a vitalist in strategy. When we say vitalist, what that means is they aren't utilizing nutrition in an allopathic manner, right? They are considering all the components to the healing hierarchy of the body. There is a therapeutic order, and it's done with wisdom. So again, this is Dr. Monzo certainly is helping us understand that there's a strategy for each person, but it is specific to you. So I'm going to end with that. And Dr. Monzo, thank you again for spending this hour with us. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.